Midway, a battle that rewrote the Pacific War's destiny, the fate of an ocean, decided by desperate men in a cauldron of steel and fire. But what if the Imperial Japanese Navy had triumphed, crushing the US fleet and seizing total control? And let's find the answer to the question, what if? A Japanese triumph at Midway would plunge the US Pacific Fleet into immediate, profound devastation. The catastrophic loss of crucial US carrier groups, Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown, almost certainly sunk or severely damaged, would trigger strategic paralysis. America's primary offensive punch would be obliterated, effectively halting any significant counterattacks for months, potentially even years, and granting Japan uncontested naval superiority across the Central Pacific. With its formidable carrier fleet largely intact and its tactical objectives achieved, Japan would swiftly solidify its dominion, securing its expanded defensive perimeter and freeing up invaluable resources for further audacious aggressions. Back home, news of such a crushing defeat would send shockwaves through the American public and military, plummeting morale and sparking widespread calls for leadership changes. This national despair would foster a profound shift towards a more defensive, even isolationist US posture, inevitably delaying any serious Allied offensive for a considerable period. Emboldened by a decisive Midway victory, Japan's Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere would expand dramatically. With its formidable fleet largely intact, Japan would press its advantage, potentially capturing Midway Atoll itself, or eyeing crucial targets like Hawaii, key South Pacific islands, or parts of Australia, firmly securing its strategic foothold. Unhindered, Japan would swiftly consolidate control over Southeast Asia's resource-rich territories, ensuring an uninterrupted flow of vital oil, rubber, and minerals to fuel its war machine for years. This unchecked expansion would fundamentally shift the global power balance, presenting a formidable unified Axis front that would compel Allied powers to entirely reevaluate their global war strategy and resource allocation. In this grim new reality, America's response to the defeat at Midway would initiate a long, grinding struggle. With its carrier fleet decimated, any counteroffensive would be drastically delayed, compelling the US to rebuild its naval power. The strategy would pivot toward extensive submarine warfare, bolstering land-based air capabilities, and accelerating new warship construction, significantly prolonging the conflict with an initial focus on defensive containment. The perceived existential threat from an Ascendant Japan would ignite an even more desperate industrial mobilization, potentially prioritizing long-range bombers or advanced submarines and exploring alternative offensive strategies. However, a prolonged war of attrition, marked by early defeats and slow progress, could ignite significant internal turmoil, straining public support and potentially radicalizing the nation's war effort to an unprecedented degree. A Japanese victory at Midway would shatter global geopolitics. Allied unity would strain as resources diverted to the Pacific would inevitably weaken the European front, granting Germany greater freedom and prolonged success. In Asia, Japan, free from a strong US fleet, could intensify its war in China, securing vast territorial gains or dictating a far more favorable peace, drastically reshaping East Asian power dynamics. Furthermore, the Soviet Union would face a dire predicament, a formidable axis on two fronts, Germany in the west and a strengthened Japan threatening its far east. This dual pressure would severely impair its ability to resist Germany and diminish its post-war influence in Eastern Europe. A Japanese triumph at Midway would inevitably lead to a fundamentally different global peace. The war might conclude not with an unconditional surrender, but a negotiated settlement, allowing a stronger Japan to retain significant territorial gains. This would reshape the post-war world order, solidifying a lasting Japanese sphere of influence across Asia and the Pacific. The Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere could transition from a wartime slogan into a lasting geopolitical entity, fundamentally altering the map and replacing traditional colonial powers with a Japanese hegemony for decades. Such prolonged conflict and altered outcomes would also drive distinct technological advancements, perhaps in radar, jet engines, or nuclear weapons, and foster unique cultural exchanges, creating a world vastly different from our own, where Japan's dominance in Asia casts a profound, enduring shadow. A Japanese victory at Midway would have cemented their Pacific dominance, prolonged World War II, and profoundly reshaped global power dynamics and the post-war world. In your opinion, what if Japan won the Battle of Midway? Share your thoughts in the comments.